I gather one of the themes that you're going to be talking about is this issue of how we preserve an open internet at a time and in a space where hacking and malware and so many other threats seem to be trying to undermine it. What's the answer to that?
Well, there are several answers, in fact. And first of all, that's quite correct. I mean, preserving the value of the internet, in spite of the fact that there are people out there trying to erode its value for their own benefit, is a challenge. I have three recipes to deal with this problem. The first one is technical, by actually adopting technical means to prevent or blunt some of the attacks that might take place. Some of that involves users and empowering them with two-factor authentication, for example, or end-to-end encryption of their content, their emails and their blogs and so on. The second thing we can do is to say that if we catch someone performing some of these abusive behaviors, then there will be consequences. Now that may require law enforcement, it may require cooperation across international boundaries, it may require some agreement about what is or isn't acceptable behavior in this online environment. So there's a lot of discussion to be done there. But it's not unlike other situations where we have said to people, our society says this behavior is unacceptable. We won't catch everyone, but if we catch you, there will be consequences. Then the third thing that I would argue is that we might decide as a society that certain behaviors are simply not acceptable, and we could tell people, just don't do that because it's wrong. And although that sounds a little wimpy, if enough people in the society agree that that is the case, then there will be peer pressure against people who are behaving in ways that the society thinks is unacceptable. And so we have those three kinds of mechanisms that we can use to address the problem.
You're also speaking about what I guess you've termed the digital dark age that we're living in at the moment. What do you mean by that, and what can we do to address it?
So the problem that I foresee is that many of the digital media that we rely on now to hold all of our photographs and many of our documents, our emails and everything else, may not last very long. Some of the media that we're all accustomed to, like 5¼ inch floppies and 3½ inch floppies and CD-ROMs, either don't have an absolute lifetime beyond a few decades, or there are no readers able to read it. So I'm concerned that we make sure we copy bits into new media so they're still readable, and also find a way to preserve the software that makes the bits meaningful. Because if you have a bag of bits that are supposed to be interpreted as a movie, but you don't have any software that understands the format of the file that is supposed to be playable as a movie, then it's just a bag of bits. So we have work to do to preserve software and maybe operating systems that will run that application software, and maybe even emulation of hardware that ran the operating systems that run the applications. So there's work to be done to preserve algorithms, to preserve open source software, and to preserve documentation about hardware, so we can recreate environments if we have to make content reachable and readable and understandable over really long periods of time.
Artificial intelligence seems to be the buzzword in technology these days. A lot of talk about how it and these machine learning algorithms and that kind of thing are going to undermine our jobs and even our society. Do you feel that threat at all, or not?
No, I think that this is way overblown. Of course, there will be new jobs created and old jobs destroyed, not just by artificial intelligence, but by just the general automation and general evolution of the way in which we do our work. But those new jobs are created, and we just have to make sure that we can train people to do the new jobs as they show up. This is going to be necessary anyway, because the longer our lifetimes are, the longer we will work, and the more we will need to learn as we work, because technology will keep changing over time. So I'm persuaded that most artificial intelligence is simply a tool that we get to use. When you use Google Translate, you're invoking a great deal of artificial intelligence. When you do a Google search, you're invoking a great deal of machine learning. Well, when you're sitting in one of our self-driving cars, you are definitely invoking a lot of artificial intelligence. These are tools for us to use. They do things for us that we could not do ourselves, but they are not, in my view, a threat. And so this hyperbolic reaction, I think, is, well, hyperbolic.
The internet has changed so many things in our lives, many of them for the good. But one area I suppose that people are more and more concerned about is privacy, and having their privacy encroached upon by large internet companies that I guess are gathering more and more data about us. Is there a danger that in time that threat of privacy could actually undermine the usefulness of the internet in itself.
Well, certainly if people feel that using this tool somehow erodes their sense of and their real privacy, there will be, for some people anyway, a real barrier to continued use of the service. And we hope, frankly, I hope that we can counter that problem by exhibiting how privacy can be preserved. There are the risks associated with using online resources, people hacking in, getting your usernames and passwords, invading your applications, whether it's email or blogs or something else. So what we want to do is provide tools for people to protect themselves and frameworks in which that protection can be realized. So at Google, for example, everything that we do online is encrypted while it's in our hands, or while it's in transit between our systems and the users' machines, their laptops, desktops, and pads. So we want to empower people to protect themselves by using these various tools, and that, I think, is the strongest way in which we can help people feel safer in the net. With regard to privacy in particular, we try to be very transparent about the information that we know about and use, for example, to figure out which ads we should show. So we allow people to see by going to My Account, for example, or My Activity, which are two Google destinations, that let people see what information are we using to direct ads in their direction, what activities have we captured. They can erase that stuff, they can eliminate all of it, they can tell us not to use any of it. So we want them to know what we're doing. We also want them to discover that sometimes having that information, which we don't share with anyone, it's strictly internal, is beneficial to them, because they will, if they care about advertisements, they only care if those ads are interesting and useful to them. Otherwise, it's just noise. And so our ability to pick an ad which is going to be of interest is actually a benefit, as opposed to being forced to look at something you're not interested in. So we even let people say, I don't want to ever see this ad again. And that goes across all the various platforms that you use to get to Google. We pay attention to things like that. That's an important feedback.
Finally, one industry, I guess, in particular that's having a hard time getting to grips with the changes the internet has brought is the media industry, both in terms of trying to figure out models and advertising, and also dealing with this growing issue of fake news. How big a problem do you consider that to be, and do you have the answer to what we're all looking for?
So this is a fairly composite question. With regard to fake news, believe me, it is very, very hard to get a computer algorithm to decide something is fake. And the reason it's so hard is that someone can use a botnet, for example, to pump more confirmation of some fake news item. And so an algorithm which is trying to figure out, what is the body of belief may be mistaken by the use of these various botnets in order to make it look as if everybody believes this is true, even if it isn't. So that's hard. One thing we can do is help people learn how to decide whether something is in fact true or false, and that means asking questions like, where did this come from? Who else is saying the same thing? Do I have any counter evidence of this? Am I willing to look more broadly than normal? Do I stay inside my little news bubble, or do I look more broadly to decide what information I should accept or reject? So that's one avenue to be concerned about. The media has actually taken a huge advantage of the internet's ability to deliver content to people in a very direct way. So streaming audio and streaming video have become the basis for new businesses. And so in that sense, it's contributed to growth rather than inhibiting growth. The news media in particular, however, had a business model which was based on physical printing on paper, for example. That's why you hear newspaper. And it was the perfect choice for dissemination of a large amount of information on a regular basis that people cared about, the news. And since you knew people were going to read the news, they also could be shown ads, and you could charge people for that. It's a perfect business model. Classified ads were another revenue stream. The online world has disrupted that particular model. Finding a new model, especially for good quality news reporting, is a big challenge, and it is not solved yet. We're seeing examples of the private sector engaging in solutions. And I give credit to Jeff Bezos at Amazon for having acquired the Washington Post and given them a runway in order to repopulate their investigative reporting capability. But we still need to find better business models to sustain this kind of high-quality journalism. I think it's essential to the kind of democracies that most of us would like to live in, that we have a strong and effective and independent fourth estate. And we need a way of sustaining that. And that still remains somewhat elusive.
Vint Cerf, thank you very much indeed.